Welcome to People More Interesting Than Me, the podcast, where I step back and let fascinating individuals take the spotlight. Join me as I sit down with incredible guests who captivate and inspire, showcasing their stories, experiences, and wisdom that make them truly extraordinary. Tune in for engaging conversations that'll leave you enlightened and entertained. At least I'm entertained. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of van life with the incredible Patty Bolan. A couple years ago, Patty made a life-altering decision to trade the conventional for the unconventional. She embraced the freedom of van living, transforming her four-wheeled companion into a home that allowed her to pursue her passions with unmatched enthusiasm. From mountain running to rock climbing, and even shredding the slopes on her snowboard. In this episode, we peel back the curtain on the nuances of van life, exploring the highs and lows of this nomadic lifestyle. Join us as Patty shares her experiences, the challenges she's faced, and the undeniable allure of a life on the road. Enjoy. So kind of explain to me, how did you get into the nomadic lifestyle? So just for listeners, Patty has this, everyone needs to check out what's your Instagram just in case so they can look at it before they
Oh
even
yeah.
listen to the rest of the episode.
Yeah, P. Dot Bolan. So P.
Okay,
Dot Bolan.
perfect. So if you guys look at, there's like a little long, not a long video in term of TikTok, like 3 or 4 minutes that shows kind of like slices of her putting the van together, which is amazing. It's got solar panels. It's got spots for her snowboard. It's got spots for her rock climbing gear. It's got its own bed, stove, heater. Like it's all tricked out. And if you look at it and then you look at all the stuff she's able to do with this, it's crazy. So what what made you do this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Few different things. I mean, I was always interested in it because I never like staying in one place. Like ever since I was like 18, I was constantly moving around for like different seasons and stuff. So I thought I was in the middle of my PhD at the time, like 3 years in. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to build a van, but obviously it'll have to wait until once I'm done with grad school. But then during spring of 2020, when COVID hit, all the classes I was in went online, all the classes I was teaching went online. Um, and I had this race in southern Utah in April of 2020. And I was like, well, if everything's remote, I'll just
What
go.
type of race? Like long
And
distance?
it was 100K, yeah, an
Okay.
ultra. Yeah. In Zion, which it ended up getting canceled. But
Oh,
I
that
was like,
sounds
oh,
amazing.
I know. I did it the next year. I did it in 21. It was amazing. Um, but yeah, I was like, well, I had like a little Audi hatchback and I knew I could sleep in the back because I've slept in it on every road trip I've done before. I was like, well, I'll just go out there with my laptop and bring a cooler and like live in the desert for a month if everything is remote. And I found that I was way more productive than when I was working my little desk that I set up in my home office for COVID. Because I would just set up a campfire every night and just pull my little portable desk out and my laptop and I'd work by the fire. There'd be no TV or roommates to distract me or anything. And I was like, wow, I'm actually like a lot better at working on the road than I am from home. So that 1 month, like in the desert out of my car, like kind of convinced me, like, okay, maybe I can do a van while I'm in grad school. Um, so when I got home, I started like scheming about that. And then I was living with my ex-boyfriend at the time. We both hated Davis. I went to UC Davis, and it's this I lived there for 3 years, which is about as long as I could have lived there because it's very flat and dry and hot, and I love cold and mountains. Um, so we were kind of torn. I wanted to move to Tahoe, he wanted to move back to Portland, and we are like, "Let's just get a van, and that'll be our compromise, and we'll just kind of switch between the 2." Things didn't work out. We broke up, like, at the very start of the build pretty much, and then I ended up keeping it and building the rest of it out on my own. But yeah, I really so there's that. I wanted to leave Davis. I found out that I was productive working from the road. And I also just fundamentally don't like paying rent. Like I feel like it's just throwing away money. Like even now I'm like, I'm gonna stay in this van until I can buy a house. So that's kind of from a financial perspective too, as like I'm making monthly payments, but at least I'm like gonna own something at the end. So
No, that's amazing because I
Mhm.
always wanted to own, and this was before I got married, like those things you dream about and then they slowly get changed. Like I wanted to live
Yeah.
in like Seattle or Boston, have like a little
Yeah.
mini teeny house. And you
Right.
look through all the plans. Well, don't say right because you've already done this. So you're like, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, I think I understand exactly how you feel, but on a larger scale, because it feels like I have everything you have, but you have it in such a small area. You have it in like a women's bathroom size, or even
Yeah,
small.
literally.
Like, oh no, my heater. Like, I have some of the same issues you have. Like, oh, the electrical. Like, I'm not getting enough
Right.
electric. Let me go to the breaker box, and you like all you have to do is like turn like 3 feet or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yep.
Um, but the funny thing is like how much you and obviously you didn't mention this, but this is me assuming that you're smart because you have a PhD in physics. I don't
Right.
want to make a presumption or anything, but
Thank you.
you probably have learned a gazoodle, yes, a gazoodle amount of things just from like upkeeping stuff. Like the specs on like your heater, the specs on like
Right.
all your electrical
Yeah.
equipment, like and I guess you don't really need to use any type of inverter. You probably use a step down voltage from your solar panels, and they're
I
probably
don't
more,
even, yeah, I made it so simple. I didn't use an inverter, so everything is DC 12-volt
and
current
they're
in the
about like
van.
300 watts a piece or around that, I would imagine, or something.
There's, yeah, so I mean, in terms of the solar, I have three panels that are 180 watts each,
Oh,
which
okay.
is, I think more than most people have. I have almost 600 watts,
Okay.
and then a 400 amp hour lithium ion battery, which I just replaced like a few months ago. I used to have AGM, but
I
yeah,
think I saw
so
that, and you're like, what was it, like 2,000 or
oh my
$3,000?
God. Yeah,
And
it's
that
two
must,
grand for the
that definitely
battery.
must hurt like the bottom lines, especially since
Yeah.
I would imagine. Uh,
Yeah. I wasn't
so,
planning to spend that much then.
so just to help out my reality TV people, just like we were talking about. Can you
Yeah.
explain, if you want to, the logistics of like obviously people breaking up? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, a dog is hard. Like a
Yeah.
van that you decided to go half season. How did that go? Like, obviously you don't need
Yeah.
to talk about it if it was rough and you don't want this
Yeah.
person to hear about it. And
It
I can
got
cut
a
it
little
out.
complicated. Yeah. And there may be, we haven't spoken in almost 2 years, so I'm not sure if there's bad blood on his end. There isn't on mine. We stayed friends for a few months after breaking up and then didn't. But I basically, when we were buying the van, I put all the money into the down payment and put everything in my name just in case things didn't work out. I didn't want to come to a point where we went halvesies on it and then broke up and had to figure out everything. So I was like, just to be safe, which maybe wasn't a good sign for the relationship. I'll just pay for everything, put it all in my name, take out the loan on my own. And then we started to build it out together. So there's a little controversy over I paid him out some money for labor, but then there's I don't know, there's a whole backlog of things that we owed each other throughout the 4.5 years of being together. So it got a little messy towards the end, but at least there was no like question that the van would be mine. It was just when we broke up, like how much money do I owe him for the
Yeah.
work put into it and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I
So we had some tips over that,
Yeah,
but
I would imagine. I mean, like it's already stressful to cohabitate in general, but cohabitate
yeah.
and slowly build up like the nest. That's like I
Yes.
can't even imagine
Yeah.
how stressful that can be because you've already got the stresses of the house and like
Uh-huh.
so I commend you for making it through that. And
Yeah.
even coming out of it, just keep on going with it, man. That's amazing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
um, so obviously I mentioned you do rock climbing and you do snowboarding and you do
Mhm.
100K runs. Um, do you find it like I snowboard, I don't rock climb because I'm afraid of heights, but
Great. Okay.
do you find it much easier to just I'm gonna use a word that I don't usually word schlup your
Schle-
stuff. Yeah, to the cliff, the
Yeah.
mountain. Isn't it so
Hmm.
much easier? Because you see all these other
So much.
people like with, I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm gonna pronounce this right. Thul T
Oh yeah, the
I've
Thule.
never yeah, there we go. I've never heard anyone pronounce it. So
I only know that because I lived in Sweden for a little bit, so it's from
gotcha.
there. Yeah.
But like how much easier is that in your opinion?
Oh my God. It's amazing. Yeah. Everywhere I go, everything's always with me all the time. It becomes complicated if I'm like staying with a friend or house sitting for a bit and it's a situation where I've left stuff in their car or I'm taking someone else's and I'm used to just having everything there. So it makes it so much easier. I remember like when we used to live in the house in Davis, my ex and I would do a lot of like weekend trips and stuff. And the whole day before was like packing up and like finding where all of our shit is from last time and stuff. So it's amazing to just be like the other day I just went backpacking in Sierras for the last 2 days and I was like done with work, okay, I'm leaving town and going down south, and there was no stopping anywhere picking things up, like everything's always here, so
Do you have a
I love
bike
it.
in there?
No,
I was about
that's
to
the
say,
thing, a
like,
lot
I
of
don't,
people, yeah, it wouldn't fit and I just never became a bike person. I'm kind of scared of momentum, so
the one thing you don't have, you've got backpacks, rock
yeah.
climbing gear, snowboards,
Yeah, I have a
snowshoes,
boat in here. Yeah, I have a
you got a
pack
boat.
raft. Yeah,
Um,
bikes I never really got into.
Let me think. I had a question, but oh, I forgot it. It was gonna be a good one. Uh, what are some of the like essential amenities in your van that you have to have that I guess you've accumulated over, and even though they take up some of the space, you're like, no, I have to have this.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, well, obviously the heater now, which I just installed this fall, is unreal. You can't see it now, but I have a little bookshelf up here that, and that's mostly from I just spent the last however many years in academia and I gathered all these physics and astronomy textbooks along the way. I was like, well, I need obviously to display that somewhere. So that's there. And the other thing that is really causing me a lot of trouble right now, since I built that whole shelving system out of the back of the van this fall, that lost me a lot of space because I used to just throw everything in the garage under the bed. Um, and now the thing that I'm having trouble storing, like I have a guitar right next to me now, is I have like 6 different string instruments because I grew up playing Irish folk music. So it's hard to fit like a fiddle and a banjo and a mandolin and a guitar and all of that. I'm trying to find slots for that, but it's so nice to have the option to just pull something out and play it whenever I want. And I never
Yeah,
want to have stuff that I own anywhere else. So I'm just trying to find a way to fit it all in the van.
that's the perfect answer up to my next question. However, I'm gonna stop
Yeah.
it before I forget the other one. Where were you raised?
Wisconsin.
Okay. Just because the way you
Yeah.
keep on saying car, like
Oh yeah. Yeah, certain words it comes out a lot more.
no, it's
But
completely fine because I just got finished with the last season of Fargo, so like I can
oh, it's
I got that
similar. Yeah.
I got that vibe. So speaking on the minimalist aspect,
Yeah.
how has the lifestyle changed? Like what were you in before the van, like an apartment or something like that?
Yeah, I was in a house in Davis with my ex and I were sharing a room, and then we had 3 roommates that were guys in my program. So yeah, we just had a room in a house, and we were there for 3 years. And I always call it the purge of when we were moving out, and just like dump like pickup truck loads to the dump of all this stuff, and like weeks straight of just like every day bringing different things to Goodwill and different donation stuff. I got rid of so many clothes. Like this, I have this like floor to ceiling dresser here, and it's mostly clothes. Which is why I'm happy that it's just me in the van now, because I don't know how we'd fit 2 people's stuff in there. Um, but yeah, it felt really good to get rid of stuff. I did have a storage unit for a year when I first moved into the van in Davis, and it was stuff like I had a generator, I had like kitchen stuff, like a blender and all these things I was like, I'll want eventually. But then that first summer in the van, I traveled for 4 months and I didn't come back until September. And I was like, if I didn't need any of that stuff for a year, it's like, why am I paying $100 a month to store it? So I sold everything from the storage unit when I got back that fall. And now everything I own is just in here. And it's nice. Like I wear the same thing every week. Like I always have to do laundry, but that's
No,
fine.
that's amazing.
And I
Yeah.
bet it felt so good to get rid of that storage unit.
Oh my God. Yeah. And there's stuff like, that sentimental value, like my tennis racket from when I was a kid. And now I'm like, I'm so happy I don't have that. There's no reason to hang on to
Yeah.
things.
What we like to do, I mean, I'll just throw it out, but what I like to do is like
Mhm.
for toys and stuff like that, have it because I have kids, we'll put it in a
Yeah.
bucket. And if they don't miss it
Mhm.
for like a week or two, it can go. Like there's no point in
Yeah.
keeping something
Right.
that you
Yeah.
don't
That's
even
like setting
remember
things good.
exists. Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, so I know we talked about this a little at the beginning, but obviously you're in a van. And again,
Yes.
I want to like just compare it to a bunch of stuff. It's the size of like a suburban, like the area inside is the size of like a suburban, the back at least. And
Yeah.
would you feel like you get ping-ponged in your spatial cravings? Like you're in the van, so that's why you
Yeah.
decided to go rock climbing. You go snowboarding in this wide open areas, and then you're
Right.
worn out. You're tired. You want something warm and cozy, something snuggly, which isn't like a
Yeah.
big apartment or anything like that. It's like your
A
nest.
little
This
snippet.
is your nest.
Yeah.
Like you made this. You know
Right.
every nook and cranny. This isn't some
Yeah.
landlord like slum that you're
Yeah. I
sleeping in. This
personalized
is
it.
yours. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's why I think honestly, being in the van, I feel like I don't really live in a van. I feel like I just live outside and then I just sleep in a van. Like if it's nice out, like I'm in Tahoe most of the time now because I have a restaurant job here. So it's cold, so I'm not gonna like hang outside right now. But in the summer, or like if I'm in the desert for a spell or something, I'll usually just set up, I have a little portable desk and do that outside. And then only come in the van when I have to like cook or sleep or something like that, or if it's cold out. So yeah, that's why I love it. It kind of forces you to be outside more. Like usually every day here I go for a trail run or snowboarding or something like that. And it's but like if I had a house to stay in, I don't know if I'd have the motivation to,
Yeah.
leave. So it's nice
Yeah.
to have this little space and be like, well, I gotta get out. I'll go do something like
Yeah.
cardio outside.
No, that makes total sense. It's kind of like comparing like someone in my situation or similar situation to snooze. Like you have no reason
Mhm.
to hit snooze because you are like all you have to do is walk out the door and all your gear's
Yeah,
there. It's not like you're
right.
going through the house looking for the gear. You're,
Yeah.
like driving an hour to get there. You're like maybe 30
Mhm.
minutes away or just drive
Yeah.
basically crawl up front to the front of the van and drive there.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
no, that's an amazing thing
No,
to
I
do.
love it. Mhm.
Uh, so what would you tell someone, I guess, this situation, well, not the exact situation with your boyfriend, but someone who's looking to do the same thing, nomadic van type um adventure
Yeah.
that you did.
Yeah. I think honestly, like the big barrier is like obviously buying the van itself. And especially if you want to buy it built out, it'll cost a lot more. But if you have any kind of car, like you can do the same exact lifestyle. I have friends who like live in Subaru Outbacks and stuff like that. Like it's so feasible with any kind of vehicle. If you have some kind of, job where you can work on the road or you're not working at the time. Like even if you set up a tent, if you don't have room in your car to sleep in it, it all like it's so easy to do this kind of thing, even if it's just for like a week or a month at a time. Um, so no matter what kind of vehicle you have, like there's so many resources now for like where you can camp for free, where you can shower for free, dishes, like all these types of things. There's a million apps now because everyone's living van life. So no matter what kind of vehicle you have, it's easy enough to kind of get started and then maybe save and work your way up to a full-time van situation.
Yes, definitely. What this is definitely to that and the fact that there's apps for everything.
Yeah.
Just a fun fact. I listened to something or read something, I don't know where it was, but there's an app where you can go on to help blind people see stuff. Like blind people
Whoa.
will turn their phone around and then you
Yeah.
basically camera in and tell them what
That's
you
so
see.
sweet.
Yeah. And I'm
Oh my
like, man,
God.
I should do that sometime. But then I would be like what if I don't know, read something wrong? I'm
Yeah,
doing the
ruin their
exact
world.
opposite. Yeah, exactly. So obviously it's just you in the van. And like we said before, you're not like like in a van next to another van and a line of vans in a van community,
Yeah.
or at least in this
Right.
situation.
Yeah.
How do you find a sense of community, even though like on your Instagram I
Yeah.
see like 30 different people helping out with the van, well, at least in the process,
Yeah.
but like you've got
Oh yeah.
different
Yeah.
communities, right?
Yeah. And on that note, I can't take credit for, like, we were talking about electrical systems before. Like, my friend Tyler was a godsend in helping me with all the electrical. He did a bunch of my wiring. So shout out to him. But yeah, so many people helped me build it. But yeah, that's been a really tough thing, especially the like last 2 summers. So I mentioned the first summer in the van, I traveled and left for 4 months. I did the same thing this last summer. And I'm a very extroverted person. I love having people around all the time. So that's especially been a big challenge for me. Like the first summer I was in the van, I drove out to Newfoundland. I was there for 2 weeks and then I spent like a month driving back through Canada. Um, and it was like the loneliest I ever felt. There were like, I was like as far north as the roads go in Eastern Canada, like Labrador and Quebec and all of that. And there were times where like I didn't see another person and there was no service even. So I couldn't even call my friends for like a couple weeks straight. And I got so lonely. I was just like talking to myself, trying to figure out something to do. I was picking up some friends in Calgary for a climbing trip in the Bugaboos. I was just counting down days. I was like, when are they coming in? So yeah, I got really lonely there. And then same thing happened this summer. I drove the van up to Alaska, and spent like a month up there and then a few weeks driving back down. And when I was up there, like I love being in these remote places and I just wish I wasn't so extroverted and reliant on people. Like I can be alone for however long, but I just get my energy from other folks. So that's a big reason why I kind of am settling more or less, quote unquote, in South Lake Tahoe right now. Um, I came here like last November, like a little over a year ago, to get a restaurant job because I missed working in the service industry. I was in my last year of my PhD, so I was like, I can balance this and my research. Um, so I did that, and it took me a few months to like get good friends here, but then I got this community and it was so hard to leave in the summer. And I came back in October and I was like, well, I'll just be in Tahoe for a couple months. I thought I was going to be moving to Utah once I graduated in December, but I got so sucked in. I was like, I'm finally a place where like I have good friends here and I don't want to leave. So I decided to stay in Tahoe for the winter again. But yeah, that's been a big challenge. Like it's hard to balance. Like I always want to be going different places and being on the road, but I also crave community and like real conversations with people that I love. So I try and switch off, like only leave for like maybe a couple months and then get back to either one of my communities in Tahoe or in Salt Lake City or Wisconsin or something, and then hit the road again after I've had my fill of people.
That makes complete sense. And that leads me to think that you have a strong like FOMO, like fear of missing out.
For
Like
sure.
that's the whole
Yeah.
definition of the van. That's what I
Yeah.
like. Oh no, don't worry. I'll be there. Like, don't worry.
Exactly.
You need gear?
Oh my
I
God.
got an extra set.
For real. Yeah. I'm like that all the time. I'm always like, I want to be invited to everything, even though I know I can't make it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I totally get that.
Especially here, everyone's like, oh, summers in Tahoe are the best. I was like, yeah, but summers in Alaska are supposed to be the best. I don't know where to go.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And I think one thing that I don't know, I could be completely off on this, but I feel like our generation or millennial generation is, and you might not be a millennial, I'm just saying like
oh
younger,
yeah, yeah, I think so.
non-boomers. But
Yeah, yeah.
like the point that we don't really think about opportunity cost. Like in my opinion, I
Hmm.
think of worst possible case situation.
Yeah,
Like
right.
I'm optimistic and negative at the same time, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. Like, oh, let's
right.
do it,
No,
but
exactly.
that could happen. This could happen. I don't
Yeah,
know. It's
right, right, right. Yeah,
like a pinball machine, basically. Um,
exactly.
so we talked about community. What
Hmm.
I wanted to talk about is relationships. So obviously, you're no longer with your boyfriend. So going
Yeah,
to all these different places, like if you were a man, not to make this a gender thing, but if a
right,
man were
right.
to invite a man or woman back to
Yeah,
said van, it would definitely be a hard conversation and a hard ask. Like, how do
yeah.
you like navigate that?
Um, on the contrary, this is a funny thing to bring up. It's it's pretty easy for me. I found that I'm straight, unfortunately. I wish I was into women, but like a lot of guys find it a novelty. The number of dudes I've had be like, "Oh my God, I've never slept in a van before," and they love it. Like all their friends will be like, "Oh, is that van girl?" and stuff like that. So it's honestly like it's helpful for if I'm trying to get with a dude, like the van thing like kind of helps. Like at least all the guys that I'm attracted to seem
Do
to think
they
it's
do they
cool.
make any jokes about candy or something like that? I feel like
Oh,
that like
sometimes. Yeah, like, oh
okay.
yeah, I'm going to the stranger's van and
Yeah,
like in
exactly.
or whatever.
Speaking of
Um,
that, just
yeah.
before I forget this, I saw this really funny video and it was like this little
Yeah.
boy just calling adults over with candy in a
Oh
van.
my God.
And I was like, man, that's kind of funny, but kind of creepy at the same
That is
time.
funny.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's only ever helped me, I found. Yeah, ever since ending that was my only like real relationship was with that ex who I originally got the van with, and we met on the Pacific Crest Trail and then stayed together for 4.5 years after that. So it's like a big, I was like, I'm not dating anyone else until the end of grad school. So I've just kind of been single for most of the time since then. So I don't know, the van has helped with that. I'm
Yeah.
imagine if I were not a woman, the story would be a little different. Like if I weren't living in a van and some guy asked me to go home to his van, I'd be wary, you know? But
But put it this way,
I think people are like, oh, innocent Wisconsin girl. Yeah.
but let's put it this way, what if you met a guy at a bar and he had a van?
Yeah.
Would that be
Oh,
like
that's happened.
that? Oh,
Your van or
that's
mine?
happened? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's
That's funny.
happened.
That's funny.
Especially being in places like Alaska and Tahoe and
Where
spent some
it's a
time
much
in
more
Moab and
common
stuff.
thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're like half the people my age there are there in vans.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
And
turns
then in
into
the
a
Tinder profile, it's got the person in the van. And you're
hmm.
like, oh,
Yeah,
that's a nice heater. I
yeah.
think you should go with a Webasto though. That's like
You're right.
yeah.
Oh my God,
Hands
that
down.
reminds me when I was in Colorado, I spent a month there last summer before I went to Newfoundland. And I was getting kind of grody and I was literally the worst. I made a Tinder to find a dude's house to shower at. I was like, yeah, I'll hook up with him, but I'm just here for the shower. And the one dude who I ended up seeing was also in a van. And he and I met up. We were like, yeah, we both just jumped in the river to take a bath before meeting up. And we ended up like,
That honestly sounds like a comic strip. Like first one you're looking for a date and
yes.
and then you find out you both meet and you both have vans. So you're like, oh, the
Like, oh,
last one is you're jumping into a river.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Just take a river bath before.
Yeah.
So yeah, the one dude I met from that, I deleted like I used Tinder for um I'm trying to think of the word. Not usually to meet people, but for like things that I need, which is so bad. But yeah, for instance, like showers and stuff like that. Or if I'm lonely in a town and I need someone to like get a drink with. So yeah, in
Yeah.
that case, the one person I happened to meet was another van guy in town. And we still keep in touch. He's a nice dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the last question before the big question.
Mhm.
How has your journey so far kind of influenced your perspective on kind of like success and happiness, or even changed it since you started?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it kind of cemented something that I always like followed for a long time was that I want to spend all my money more on like experiences rather than things. So it's especially not like with Christmas just happening and stuff. Like I always tell people like I don't want things. Like I don't have room for anything else. I was like, buy me like a parks pass or so, something else. And even like throughout college, like I traveled a bunch internationally. I worked at a restaurant all throughout college too. And all my friends were like, how are you affording this? I was like, you guys like shopping and you go out and stuff. I was like, I'm saving up all my money to get this flight to New Zealand and stuff like that. So it kind of cemented that a lot more where it's nice to have this like physical boundary where I have no more room for physical things. Like, and I have to kind of spend all my money on experiences and stuff like that. And I never really was good at taking rests or breaks or anything. So this kind of cemented that too, is that now I'm like, oh, well, I can do, a lot of my days here in Tahoe, if I'm working at night, like I'll go like for a trail run in the morning, snowboard in the afternoon, climbing gym, shower, and then work. So I try and get at least a tri-sport day in, like
Christ for a
most of the
day.
days of the week.
I've never
Yeah.
heard of that before. Uh, so just a thought that popped into my head. You must be like a wizard at Facebook Marketplace then, because I mean, there's not always a time, and obviously you're probably looking for gear for the
Hmm.
van, looking for gear for like rock climbing. Obviously, no,
Yeah.
only the people who can afford it,
Yeah.
myself talking, don't go to like REI and go to like
Oh yeah.
all these big places.
No.
And also the areas where you visit, I'm very familiar with, where you can go to like secondhand, third hand camping stores, and not
Yes.
camping, but like gear stores,
Yeah.
which is
Oh, I love
really
that.
nice.
Yeah.
But I'm
Hmm.
down here, it's not as affluent. So marketplace is like where you go, which is
Yeah.
like, like that's a whole like opera in its own. Like you play the
Oh my
the
God.
da- the Facebook dance, like, hey,
Yeah.
are you
Oh yeah. Like
interested?
when I was selling out, yeah, like my storage unit, when I was getting rid of everything, it was just 20 different things on Marketplace at once. And there was this when I was in Alaska this summer, I spent 2 days pack rafting in Denali, and it was amazing. It was my first like solo overnight pack raft, which was awesome. But I didn't seal one of my dry bags like correctly, and it had my camera and my phone in it. So my
What
camera
kind of
was flooded.
camera? Nice camera.
Sony Alpha, yeah, a nice
Oh,
one.
the mirror
A nice
lens.
one. Yeah, it was one of the mirrorless.
Oh,
Yeah, and the next weekend I had chartered a bush plane to go up to the Brooks Range, and I was
and you
doing a
had no
4 day
camera.
backpacking trip there, and I was like, I'm not doing this without a camera. So I went on the marketplace in Fairbanks, and I spent the next 2 days just like hounding people down, like, let me buy your camera right now. And I had to drop $1,000 on a new one before that next trip.
Wow.
But yeah, so you have to figure
Man,
it out
that's
each
that's a
place.
that's a hard one. That's even worse
Yeah, it was
than
tough.
like losing the camera or getting it
Yeah,
stolen. That's just
I
like
know.
you have it in your hands and it's literally
Yeah. And it was my
as
own fault, just user error.
but you just have like a bunch of nuts and bolts, as one of my friends would say, like it's useless. It's
Yeah.
literally a paperweight now.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
that's so sad.
I
Uh,
know.
okay, last question.
Yeah.
What is something that your parents did that you'd like to pass on to a next generation?
Mhm.
And what is something that you might do differently or something new?
So I would say something I want to pass on. It's probably something that like influenced this lifestyle now. Um, is that my parents are very this is so it sounds so corny the way I'm gonna say it, but they're always like, yeah, whatever you want to do, like we can do that. Like there's I'm trying to think of a good way to say this. We would like road trip around a lot, and my dad, like when I was going to school in Boston in undergrad, he would always insist on driving me there and back from Wisconsin, which was like 18 hours each way. Um, and I remember my mom would always be like, "Oh, are you stopping halfway in Pennsylvania?" He's like, "No, the day is less than 18 hours. We can do the drive in a day." So he kind of pushed me to be like, "Okay, no, you have to get this done." So like now I can easily do like a 15-hour drive still by myself in a day and stuff like that. Um, and we always did these like every time I tell my friends, like, oh yeah, we're doing these ridiculous road trips, like not stopping at all. They'd be like, why don't you just stop and get a hotel? I'd be like, well, then you just spent $100 on a hotel and that's less money on gas that you can. So I think that kind of mindset of just, I don't know, pushing to like prioritize the important things that you want to spend your time on money on. Like I really valued that, and I think that's helped me like influence me into how I'm living in the van and spending all my time because I don't like having free time or like sitting around and watching TV and stuff like that. So I think that kind of mindset of always pushing and like spending all your time doing what you want is something I'd want to pass on. Um and something I'd change, I think, is kind of the emphasis on higher education that my parents kind of instilled. It like my sister's doing her physics PhD too right now. And my dad's from like this big Irish Catholic family where like education is very valued, which I think is important. But I kind of, now that I'm working in the service industry now and traveling around so much, especially around the world, seeing what kind of different lives people lead without all of this like rigmarole at education and bureaucracy and stuff, like it's really not I don't think I would emphasize it as much as my parents did. I'd be more focused on find out what you want to do and then figure out what you need to get to that point. And if that doesn't involve college, then that's don't waste the money, you know? So I would kind of back off from that that they kind of
Okay.
pushed on us. Yeah.
So touching on that, I just have a small question.
Mhm.
So with that PhD in astrophysics,
Yeah.
am I going to see you re-enter Pluto in 15 or 10 or 15 years, or do you feel like your life has a different trajectory than that?
Yeah, good use of trajectory. I think, yeah, I'm leaving the field, sadly. I knew that like almost right when I started grad school that I wasn't going to stay in astronomy just because I don't want to do academia. You have to devote like your whole life to it, and I'd rather do this kind of stuff. So I'm planning to go into data science. Like a lot of those jobs are remote, they pay really well. They really like physics PhDs because that's all my day-to-day work was coding and data analysis and statistics and stuff. Um, so I'm slowly starting to look for jobs in that field, but I'm trying to leave and do the Arizona Trail in a month, and I don't really want to get a real job till like maybe May or June. So I'm working on it, but probably not going back into astronomy, sadly.
Hey, I to be fair, I rarely use my degrees too. So
Yeah.
I probably should look up a statistic or some study that was done on how much people with like non even PhDs maybe use their degree in what
Yeah.
respect and stuff like that. Because
Right.
I don't think I'd be surprised by the number. Um,
Yeah.
but thank you very much for doing this and using your
Yeah.
batteries to like
Right.
support that
Well,
you
it's sunny
dated
today,
that
so
bat. Oh, it's sunny, so that's fine. And
yeah, super
well,
charged.
and your heat too. I mean,
Yeah.
your heat could kick off like 15 minutes less if you hadn't done this video.
Oh no, you're all good. I'll just be chilling here all night anyway, so
But I appreciate you donating your time. It was very
yeah.
fun, and I feel like it was
This
very
was fun.
fluid too. There was no
Yeah,
so I appreciate it.
exactly. Easy peasy. Yeah, thank
Easy
you.
peasy,
This was
yes. I like the words of easy peasy. So yeah. Um,
good.
but yeah, have a great night.
Cool. You too. Thank you, Michael.
If you like this week's episode of People More Interesting Than Me, please follow me on Apple Podcasts so you won't miss out on more episodes like these.